A new AI model goes live. Developers rush in. Companies begin testing it. For a moment, it looks like a normal frontier model launch. Then, 3 days later, access disappears. Not because of a normal outage, not because of a pricing change. Anthropic says the United States government issued an export control directive, citing national security authorities, forcing the company to suspend access to Claude Fable 5 and Claude Mythos 5. In one weekend, a consumer AI product started to look less like software and more like control technology. That single shift reveals the core question. When an AI becomes powerful enough, the debate stops being only what it can do and becomes who is legally allowed to use it.
To understand why this mattered, you need the two names at the center of the story, Fable and Mythos. Fable 5 was presented as a Mythos-class model made safe for general use. Mythos 5 was the restricted version, the same underlying model, but with some safeguards lifted for a small group of cyber defenders and infrastructure providers. That detail changes the entire story. This was not just a chatbot being taken away. It was a glimpse of a new class of AI, models powerful enough to become part of cybersecurity itself. The public saw names and benchmarks. Behind the names was a deployment model that separated ordinary users from vetted defenders and treated access itself as a safety mechanism. Project Glasswing was supposed to be the safer way to deploy this power. The idea was simple. Give advanced models to trusted defenders first, so they can find weaknesses in important software before attackers do. In a world where AI can scan code, reason through bugs, and automate parts of security work, that sounds like a breakthrough. But the same ability that helps defenders can also make governments nervous. A model that can find vulnerabilities is useful. A model that can find vulnerabilities at scale is strategic. The same model family that could protect critical code also raised a harder fear. Similar capabilities could accelerate offensive work if released too broadly.
Fable 5 was meant to be the public compromise. It carried the same Mythos-class intelligence, but with safeguards designed to reduce dangerous cybersecurity misuse. That is the central tension. Users wanted the smartest model they could get. Safety teams wanted guardrails strong enough to stop risky requests. Governments wanted assurance that the model would not become a tool for foreign adversaries. Fable was supposed to satisfy all three. For a few days, it looked like the compromise might work. In other words, Fable was not designed as a reckless release. It was designed as a carefully restricted doorway into a much more sensitive capability layer.
Then came the problem that has haunted every frontier model: jailbreaks. Anthropic says the government believed it had become aware of a method for bypassing or jailbreaking Fable 5. The company also said it reviewed a demonstration and that the demonstrated technique identified a small number of previously known minor vulnerabilities. That distinction matters. This was not publicly described as a universal master key, but it was enough to trigger a government response. The nuance leaves two truths on the table. The government saw enough risk to act, while Anthropic argued the evidence did not justify a full recall.
This is where the story becomes bigger than one company. Safety filters can block obvious requests, they can reduce risk, they can make misuse harder, but they do not make powerful systems perfectly safe. Researchers have shown again and again that determined attackers can use indirect wording, long context, role play, automation, and repeated attempts to probe the edges of a model. The lesson is not that safety is useless. The lesson is that safety is a moving target. The important point is not the recipe for a bypass. It is the governance problem. A safety system can reduce risk, but it cannot make a frontier capability politically simple.
At 5:21 p.m. Eastern, according to Anthropic, the directive arrived. It ordered suspension of access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5 by any foreign national, whether inside or outside the United States. It also included foreign national Anthropic employees. That sentence is what made the order so explosive. This was not just an external customer restriction. It reached inside the company itself, into the team around the technology. A model was no longer just a product. It had become a controlled capability. The order felt cold and bureaucratic because the most powerful object in the scene was not a hacker in a hoodie. It was a legal document.
Anthropic faced a brutal compliance problem. If the company had to block access based on nationality across customers, partners, employees, and global systems, it could not simply leave the models online and hope the filters worked. So the company said the net effect was that it had to abruptly disable Fable 5 and Mythos 5 for all customers. Other Anthropic models were not affected, but for the two models at the center of the controversy, the switch was flipped. For users, the result felt instant. One day the model existed, the next day the frontier had a gate in front of it. That is the precedent. For years, export controls in tech mostly meant chips, machines, hardware, and manufacturing equipment. But here, the controlled object was a model accessed through software. No crate crossed a border, no machine left a factory. The thing being restricted was capability itself, the ability to reason, code, search, and assist with cybersecurity at a level governments now consider strategically sensitive. This is the moment AI begins to look like an export-controlled weapon of influence. That is a new kind of border. It is not drawn on land, but inside API keys, identity checks, cloud permissions, and corporate compliance systems.
Anthropic publicly disagreed with the standard behind the recall. The company argued that a narrow potential jailbreak should not be enough to pull a commercial model from hundreds of millions of people, and warned that applying that standard across the industry could halt frontier model deployment. That matters because this is not a simple story of company versus government. It is a collision between two risk models. Government risk says, move before the damage happens. Product risk says, if every narrow failure pauses deployment, no one can ship. Both sides could claim they were trying to prevent harm, but they were optimizing for different kinds of failure.
The people caught in the middle were not just executives. They were developers whose workflows depended on the new model, cybersecurity partners who were testing Mythos-class capabilities, and employees who suddenly found the rules around their own work changed by nationality. The industry is used to access tiers: free, pro, enterprise, trusted partner. But this was different. This was a new tier imposed from outside the company, legally allowed to touch the frontier, or not. That is the human cost of abstract policy. The rule did not land on a white paper. It landed on people using and building the system.
There is also a geopolitical layer. The controversy around Project Glasswing did not happen in a vacuum. Advanced AI models now sit inside a larger struggle over chips, cloud infrastructure, cybersecurity, and strategic advantage. The question is no longer whether a model is smart. The question is who can run it, who can audit it, who can build on it, and who can be blocked from it. In that world, AI access becomes a lever of power. Hidden systems, power, infrastructure, and invisible rules now shape who gets access to the future.
But there is a second danger hidden inside the response. If the strongest closed models become restricted, developers and companies may look elsewhere. Some may move to weaker models. Some may wait for access to return. Others may turn toward open source or foreign alternatives that are harder for one government to control. That does not automatically make the world safer. It may simply push capability into places with less visibility, less auditing, and less coordination. The uncomfortable possibility is that control can reduce immediate danger while also pushing capability into less accountable places.
So what was Fable really? A dangerous model that had to be frozen? A useful tool caught in a political overreaction? Or a warning that the next generation of AI will not be governed like apps, websites, or search engines? The honest answer may be uncomfortable. It can be all three at once. Frontier AI is becoming too capable to treat as ordinary software, but too widely useful to lock away without consequences. That is why this case matters. That is why the best framing is not panic and not corporate PR. The best framing is uncertainty. This is what governance looks like when the tool is already too important. This is the real story behind Fable and Mythos. Not just a model launch, not just a jailbreak, not just a government order. It is a preview of the next AI era, where intelligence itself becomes infrastructure, where access becomes policy, and where the most important question is not simply who builds the smartest model, it is who gets permission to touch it. The future of AI may not be decided by the model that wins the benchmark, but by the gate that decides who can open it. This feels less like the end of one model controversy and more like the first version of a much larger fight over frontier intelligence.